This is a video I wasn't initially sure if I wanted to make, and I know everyone says that, but this is really something I was going back and forth on for weeks because there's been a split of people in my life. Half of everyone is saying,
"You need to make this video."
And just as many people, if not more, are saying,
"Jaden, whatever you do not make this video or even acknowledge it."
And some think I'm in the right and some think I'm in the wrong, but it's not about that, because I feel like I do have some legitimate mistakes that I want to talk about and own up to. And as my audience, I think that's fair to expect of me, since I know a lot of people, even including people I really like and respect, were legitimately hurt and upset by my video on Sonic Omens. And that wasn't my intention at all, but the rhetoric about this hasn't really slowed down much since that video's release. And from this, I've also been seeing people put words in my mouth, as well as a few clips getting a lot of traction, taking me wildly out of context. And I'm not using that to deflect or defend and be like, "Oh, I didn't make mistakes," because I did. But I think it's important to look at these criticisms with a fair and level head and clear up some of the things I'm hearing repeated by literally hundreds to thousands of people. I know a lot of people are gonna go,
"Wow, Crybaby damage control, you salty bruh."
But this is a video I don't have to make, as I haven't talked about it until now. But I want to make, as I'm even seeing hardcore Omens defenders going after other fan games, and both sides are going to extremes that I entirely don't agree with. And this isn't some Sonic culture war I'm trying to hop onto. So I want to clear up any misconceptions and mistakes I made in a final video here. Even now, these are the top suggested keywords people are searching for me, so I know a lot of people want to hear what I have to say about it all, as there's no one thing people are mad at, and it's a lot of different things all at once. And because of that, I'm going to cover them individually in their own sections, as I want to give each of the main critiques their own respective attention. I know most people are probably sick of the drama or whatever, so this is going to be my only video on it, and I want to make it as short and sweet as possible. And for anyone who's been here a while, there's a classic Sonic Show rule that I'm allowed one drama per year that I can redeem with a token and make a video on. And I guess this year's is not any one creator going after me, but rather the entirety of Twitter and the broader Sonic community. And some of it's deserved. In this video, I'm not going to be defending the game, or even really going into the game specifically much at all, as that's not the purpose of this. And whether you love or hate this game, it all boils down to opinion, something I respect of others, and it doesn't bother me if you hate this with a passion. So I'm going to be putting chapters, and I normally don't ask this, but I genuinely want people to try to get through this whole thing, as I'm condensing to keep it as short and sweet as possible, and literally next to nobody saw the Omens video all the way through. In fact, over 50% didn't even make it past the 30-second mark, meaning they just opened it to dislike and drop a comment. But I'm coming at this with a very objective and level head. Yes, no dick riding. And in return, I want you guys to try to be as fair as possible when you look at this as well. So to quickly give context for the confused, about a month ago, I released a way too long video on Sonic Omens right after its final chapter released, and in the first half of the video, I talked about my opinion on what aspects of the game I liked, and only a little bit on what I didn't, such as the voice acting, the boss fights, and most of the early levels designs. But me going into how much I liked it without addressing the controversy first, as well as putting my criticisms later in the video, made me come off as a total dick rider. And even before the video came out, I made my first crucial mistake. And this is where the initial mini blast of drama first popped off, so we'll go in chronological order.
No human being has ever experienced a truly objective reality.
In the video before the Omens one, since I had just spent about an entire week all day and night making this super long video that's an hour and a half of my autistically high detailed editing style, and I was wanting to hype up its release so it got a little attention, something everyone has to compete for on this website, and I knew a video that wasn't on the hot new Frontiers footage would perform terribly. So I added a mention at the very end of my previous video that the next one was on how Omens was, in quote, objectively the best Sonic fan game. And even though I meant 3D fan game and clarified that on Twitter, regardless is a huge wording error in retrospect, because I thought it was just a little tongue-in-cheek. It would make people excited for the video, and I didn't expect it to get clipped for people to rage about on Twitter. But still, this is my bad. Obviously, a game being the best is a subjective thing, and I assume people would have taken that as obviously hyperbole, because again, it's impossible for anything to be objectively the best, especially Sonic fan games. I just saw this as a goofy little way as, while I did like the game, I wanted to exaggerate so people who watched the actual video and got through it saw my critiques. So it's like, oh, he's a dick rider, and then you watch it and you're like, by the end you're like,
Maybe the raccoon isn't mentally disabled.
But you know, it was way too long. And that part is entirely my fault. And I also didn't consider that me saying this alone would make people think the video was an hour and a half of how great Omens is, when in reality, that's not the case at all. As while it's extremely long, I did end up criticizing it a lot further in, and since I put in the same care into editing that I would any shorter video, I thought people would sit through it, which was ultimately my bad. And again, in case anyone wants to clip me, I'm not saying this is my only mistake, but I am saying this is my mistake here. I know a lot of people brush off criticism like,
You're saying people didn't watch it? Yeah, we did.
But I can actually see from the analytics that literally nobody even got to the part where I first started criticizing it, nonetheless the end. And this is my fault because I didn't account for a major factor here. Because undebatably, it's hard to watch someone go on ogling over something you hate without wanting to drop your dislike, your angry comment, and just click off, which makes perfect sense to me. However, as a result of this, I already know tons of people are going to be spamming other fan games they think are better in the comments, but I want to go into those each separately in their own sections as I have some updated thoughts on all of them. Specifically, most people are upset with my thoughts on Sonic GT and Sonic Roboblast 2. And in a lot of ways, I totally see why these are objectively better than Omens. So I want to give them each their own section, as I have a bit to clear up on each of those. I also want to talk about Spark the Electric Jester 3, which I know isn't a fan game. Now that it's released, I've actually beaten the game with over 18 hours in it, and I think the clip I'll show that's really going around everywhere completely misrepresented my thoughts on this and removes some really important context, as there's so much love for not just this project, but all these projects mentioned. But before I go into the Sonic fan and inspired games, I want to talk about the Maria situation, as I know that's a lot more pressing on people's minds, and a lot of the discussion around this is all over a 1-minute clip that blatantly, and literally they say it, takes me entirely out of context. So we have to cover this before we move on to the much lighter topic of fan games. Another point I'm seeing, but definitely less, is the Maria point. I actually think I covered this well, since all I did was condemn it like a million times in my video. And to give one of the artists criticism over the Maria drama that I'll get into later is totally fine. 100%, if you hate him, that's valid, and I won't even try to change your mind. However, since it was towards the end of the Google Doc, it was covered much later in the video, and people never got an update on what actually went down since then. So right after the video dropped, Ouroboros put out an entire document that's crammed with stuff, and I'm not going to go into it in full here, but I will link it below. However, in it they claim the model was not made by their team and was outsourced by a Ukrainian girl, and her name's here. I don't remember it off the top of my head. And this is confirmed by the fact that we found the source model with alternate text from the same girl earlier, before this document even came out. Her reasoning for it is that it's something she grew up with in her culture, and she thought it'd be a fun little Easter egg, since she always changes the text on the model, and this has been verified by multiple versions with different text found online. However, since this blew up and they became aware of it, as it's not visible in any way in the game, they've removed it in a big update they put out. Also, I've seen a lot of debate on that.
Are they aware of it?
Are they not?
Obviously, no one can say for certain whether they were or were not aware of it, but since they posted their full private DMs, as well as their group chat logs about the situation, and they've been very transparent and provided proof every time it was requested, something I'm not seeing their opposers do. Plus, you add in the fact that they got a patch out that removed this and fixed a ton of issues less than a month later, something Sonic Colors Ultimate took 3 times as long to do for their first substantial patch. I want to be fair, and if you hate Omens Omens, I can see why my fairness in giving credit to the other side pisses a lot of people off. But I think even if you hate this fan game, it's only right to separate the real criticisms from things that are being incorrectly portrayed. I am disgusted by the idea of some guy making some sick degenerate thing out of a young kid and writing bad girl in a perverted, twisted way. But when you add the context that it's the girl's calling card and her putting text related to the project on her models is an homage to the culture she grew up with in her country, then it definitely paints a different picture of this whole situation, especially when the devs who had to go and ask who did it, as they initially thought it was one of their outsourced people trying to sabotage them, and they clearly weren't aware of the texture's existence as it's one among thousands and also isn't visible in-game. So no bug testing or early builds would show it, and it not being visible is something even the original doc writer acknowledges in their few sentences about it in the hit piece. Everyone's free to feel how they want about not just this situation, but the entire game. And I'm not telling you how to feel, but it's not objective or fair reporting to just show the one side people want to see. And if I was in some controversy, I would want someone to give me the same objectiveness as well. I want to talk about one of the clips going around. While there are mistakes that I made and want to own up to, I don't think my coverage on this part is one of them. There's this one clip going around with tons of views that literally has a caption acknowledging it's out of context, which, I mean, good on them at least. And it shows me reading how I speculate the devs will respond to the Maria situation, something I, again, condemned like a million times in the video, and since so few people actually watched it, I've only seen a handful of people bringing this up. But regardless, they cut out the beginning to make it sound like I'm the one defending it, when I'm literally saying how I think they're gonna respond.
And at least with the bad girl one, Maria is a boss and like bad here, so it makes some plausible deniability.
And now here's the full clip with the context around it.
Now this Twitter user did some research on what the original model had before the Omens team changed it, expecting normal or even modest undergarments in their words, but instead found that the panties originally said, "Haters gonna hate," which is debatably much worse. Now, this user didn't say who the original creator was, and likely for the best, as I can hear the war horns, and I'm not sure if they got the original creator to work on Omens with them, or if they just licensed or credited this model, which they have done with a bunch of models, as the community has made some amazing Sonic models. And at least with the bad girl one, Maria is a boss and like bad here, so it makes some plausible deniability. But with the haters gonna hate, I mean, that's even more sus. And I want to make it clear, as I have been defending Omens pretty hard, but I'm not defending this point at all.
And even though they cut out the context, you can still kind of hear at the end where I bring it back around, as well as you can clearly tell now. I'm saying the bad girl texture is bad, but there's some plausible deniability context. And while I am saying that plausible deniability is because bad and, you know, boss, I'm actually condemning it harder because I'm saying the haters gonna hate one is even worse. It's implying like, hey, what are they hating, you know? I don't know, I feel like it's creepier. Especially when there was a lot of haters gonna hate art when Sage got revealed for Frontiers. Some of you guys are fucking degenerates. And you think with them writing that it was out of context in the tweet itself, people wouldn't run with it. At least not that far. But tons of people in the community jumped on it despite that. I've condemned the Maria thing like a gorillion times, and the model and text wasn't even made by the team and has since been removed, so I don't know how much harder I can go into it.
And while maybe this is an edgy joke, I think it's definitely over the line, especially for a Sonic fan game and a 12-year-old girl. Now, this aspect was made by a single person, who I am totally okay with condemning and demanding an explanation from. But at the same time, I think it's wrong to dogpile the rest of the dev team who's worked non-stop these past few years to develop the most complete and polished Sonic fan game ever. But again, the fact that the writing is off-color and has an inherent sexual implication is what makes this actually valid criticism. However, I've seen a lot of people calling this dude a P3DO, and while I don't defend this situation at all, it's certainly not an evidence to make a claim that hard and that strong. And even calling the project a P3DO project is crazy. Any flack given to this rogue person is totally justified. And if the project were to defend this and not just apologize apologize or fix it, then I'd condemn the project too.
So with all that, now we can move on to the fan games and Sonic inspired games. So I think a lot of people are misconstruing my opinion on Spark 3, as I actually love this game and wasn't that critical to it. Now, I want to acknowledge another big wording error I made, which is I said Spark 3 is like a Sonic fan game, but with swapped character and level assets. Now, I'm not saying this in a hyper-literal sense, or in a negative way. As well, there's certainly plenty of differences. At its core, it does play like a Sonic game, and is very heavily Sonic-inspired. I'm not saying it's some loophole to profit off of a fan game and they just changed the assets, as I'm very aware the whole intention is to be an original IP, and create its own separate thing that's just inspired from Sonic. Guys, I'm like 23. I'm not that stupid. I think it's similar to like how Yooka-Laylee is based off and inspired by Banjo-Kazooie, and even has a lot of the same core elements. And that's where my mistake comes in, because it would be a bit stupid to say Yooka-Laylee is a Banjo-Kazooie fan game. The project is very transparently Sonic-inspired. Even their own Wikipedia states, Danaluz, sorry if I mispronounced that, the game's developer previously created a variety of fan games based on the Sonic the Hedgehog series and drew inspiration from his work in the creation of Spark the Electric Jester, his first commercial title. In fact, despite being a very short article, the word Sonic is used 37 times in it. I've also seen a couple people get confused about it, but I'm not saying this game is like secretly using a Sonic fan engine or whatever, and I never said anything even remotely close to that, but this did get claimed by a guy who made a 22-minute video going over a 1-minute clip just over and over again.
I even looked up, bro, this right here. I wanted to see if Spark 3 used any of the fan-made engines. The Sonic bounce engine.
For a guy who's going on an entire video about me miswording something, fan game instead of fan inspired game, I gotta tell you, Will, there's no such thing as the bounce engine. I don't even know what he was referring to. Bumper, maybe?
Or the Infinity engine, this, that, and the third. And from what Google is telling me, salute to my friend Heaven for, bringing this to my attention. He said that Spark 3 used Unity.
Oh no, he's not going to try to make the point I think he is he?
All right, I did my research on Unity, and it says, Unity's first open source development program encourages you to, so it's open source.
Oh no.
So it's not even using any of the Sonic, whatchamacallits.
Oh no.
I don't know about Spark 2 or Spark 1.
Will, I have to stop you in your tracks. You're not going to go to the Unity website and see this is a Sonic the Hedgehog engine. And also, let's say Spark 3 was made with a Sonic fan engine, which by the way, is something I've never claimed. It would still be inside of a shell like Unity or Unreal. You do know the most popular Sonic engines are in Unreal, right? And there are ones in Unity too? These frameworks they build in the engine aren't like a new engine, but it's a framework. And I'm not going to go too much into this video because again, it's 22 minutes long, going over a 1-minute clip that is not only out of context, but he does the classic commentary channel plausible deniability, where you take a clip that's clearly out of context and then go,
I don't know, guys. This clip might be out of context, but I doubt it. I doubt it is.
like, look at this.
I really hope this wasn't taken out of context. I doubt it, because I've already seen this clip. I hope this was taken out of context. I doubt it though. Now the Sonic Show.
Yes.
I really hope this was taken out of context, brother.
Oh?
I don't think this, I don't know, man. I don't know if this was taken out of context, but you said something that rubbed me the wrong way. I really hope and pray that the person clipped this took it out of context.
Wow.
But I doubt it. But I hope.
Yopes.
Bruh, you gotta be trolling. You gotta be trolling, or this has to be taken out of context.
Oh man, I wonder if it is.
Cause if you for real, did someone clip you and take you out of context, my G? I'm very confused, man.
He is distraught over this.
I hope and pray this was taken out of context. And this is what I'm talking about. It's like, bro, I hope that you're trolling or hope someone took you out of context. Because if you for real.
This is at the 14-minute mark out of 22. This is probably his 10th or so watch of the clip.
Run it back one more I just run it. I oh my
my
goodness.
god.
Right.
Me accidentally calling Spark 3 a fan game is going to make this random guy come.
Bruh, did you just say an original game that is inspired by Sonic the Hedgehog is a fan game?
One thing brought up a lot to me that I should mention is that Spark 3 definitely does have a lot that sets it apart from Sonic. And the one being brought up the most is the combat.
Look, they added combat. Sonic doesn't have combat like that.
And having completed the game and really liked it, it pains me to say this, but the combat is easily the least fun part of this game. They're often shoved in the middle of action stages, and they totally disrupt the flow and momentum that you're getting through the, fast gameplay. And it isn't awful by any means, just kind of boring. But again, that's just my opinion. The combat is a very small aspect in comparison to the action stages, which there are tons of. But it is important to add is it is something that sets it totally apart from Sonic. Other than that, I really like this game, like a lot. So I don't know why everyone, even my biggest and most hopeful supporters, are assuming I hated it. Even in the clip going everywhere, the only criticisms I brought up in the entire video is that the camera looked a little janky on the 90-degree turns I showed, which it did there, and the player fell through a couple platforms in the video that I watched and also showed. The only other thing I say about Spark 3 that can be taken as a critique is that the graphics aren't as high as Omen's, which even in the clip, I say they're not trying to be.
I mean, I don't think it's trying to be, but it just isn't.
It's a different look in art style it's going for, and it's definitely gorgeous in its own way. Just like how Jet Set Radio isn't as graphically high as a game like The Last of Us, doesn't make one better than the other. And that's not a point I ever tried to make, as I've always believed gameplay is king. And many of the games I still play were like made over a decade ago. The only reason I brought up Spark in reference to Omens is to compare basic aspects of it, as while Spark 3 isn't a fan game, it is still a very fleshed out game and does serve as a great example as to why fan-inspired games will almost always have better production value than fan games. Again, the game wasn't released at the point of my video, and upon release, it turns out only like 1 or 2 levels have these jarring turns. So it's insane people are expecting me to have completed the game before mentioning it at all, even though it's not released. And then some people are saying,
Oh, you didn't find and download and complete the demo?
which it's not a review on the game. I was just mentioning that the camera seemed a little less good. And by the way, upon release, I really liked the game. Should nobody be either positive or critical towards Frontiers using the same logic? However, to close up Spark 3, I really like this game. I think it's very fleshed out, very polished, really good production value, and all the things I like about it are what I liked about Omens, which again, is just my opinion. You can hate Omens all you want. But I do want to show that it's not one versus the other, and you're allowed to like both projects. A lot of people online are treating these fan games like football teams.
Nah, screw GT, I'm SRB2.
Nah, screw SRB2. I'm Project 06.
Guys, just enjoy multiple games, okay? Moving on. One of the most popular critiques I'm seeing online is me not absolutely loving or even talking much about Sonic Robo Blast 2. I probably should have mentioned this in my video, but I know you guys get sick about me talking about the aughts so much. However, a side effect for about a quarter of all of us Spurgos is increased nausea as well as some other similar issues. And this is something that hits me hard. I think it's the way the floor and sky textures move here, but the design of this game and the emulated 3D makes me so motion sick and nauseous that I physically can't play it for more than 5 to 10 minutes. The last time I remember having this issue from a non-VR game like that was when I was at a friend's house a few years back, and we randomly put on Crysis 2 on the Xbox 360. And in case you don't know, console games have like no settings. And I don't know why, but it triggered me so badly. I think it was a combination of input delay, slow frame rate, heavy motion blur, and the camera swaying back and forth. But it actually made me run into the bathroom to vomit and embarrass myself in front of my whole friend group. And I wish to God I was making a joke there, but unfortunately, this is a very real thing that happened. Even recently, I had a somewhat similar issue with a game called Raft, but luckily they have an option for people like me, and it fixes the issues for like 90% of the time. unless you get dehydrated, then the camera it gets all loopy again. I actually really wanted to like Sonic Robo Blast 2, as all my friends want me to play it with them, but I have to turn them down, and I'm sorry, but I can't help that it makes me sick. Another reason I don't feel it's appropriate to compare or go in depth into this game as opposed to other 3D games is that even its biggest supporters say it's technically 3D, because even though it's a 2D engine made in the 90s, it's emulating 3D levels in a playstyle with its space, just like Doom and Wolfenstein 3D, because it's on that engine. But if it's just technically 3D, then I see that as its own league, and it isn't really comparable to modern 3D titles, is it? Nobody would genuinely compare Wolfenstein 3D to Fortnite, so it feels weird to do that with fan games just because they both have Sonic as the star. Now again, because I know someone's going to take me out of context, Sonic Robo Blast 2 is probably an amazing game, and I know years of effort and hard work have been put into it. But how can I call something the best fan game ever when it makes me physically too sick to even play it? And it's great that a ton of people love this game, and you know, shout out to you guys, but I can't play it or watch people play it. So I mean, what do you want from me?
Okay, Sonic GT is base, dude. This is the best 3D Sonic fan game in my opinion. Sonic GT is so good.
Now, let's talk about Sonic GT. This is a project I actually really like, but a ton of people have said,
This is the best fan game of all time.
but even its own creator wouldn't agree with that, since this project has made a spiritual successor with the baseline physics of GT and has been working to refine the gameplay and create an original IP called Project Rascal. And this is probably one of my favorite Sonic-inspired projects out there at all. Now I know if I say the word fan game, everyone will say,
Screw you, Jaden. This clearly is not Sonic. That's a rascal.
but this is just how any developer with decent intelligence continues their project with no worries or possible issues. If there's no way to possibly fund the project or even create profit at any point, then it's just a money suck hobby, and anybody who's passionate about making games would obviously want to make that a full-time job and not have to work at Burger King while cranking out their dream game, only to release it years later with very little interest and not get rewarded in any way in terms of profit. GT had a sudden end because there was clearly so much effort and good ideas put into it, but no future release on multiple platforms, even any Steam or monetary platform, and without funds you can't get outside help or really spend that much of your time on it, and it could only go so far. I really like these original IPs based off of Sonic. With fan games you can try things Sonic never could without the criticism of,
Hey, Sega, Sonic would never do that. Totally out of character.
but with these original IPs, you can do the same things. So while these original IPs are not comparable to Sonic Team titles at all, I think it's fair to have these fan-inspired games and fan games at least in the same discussion. Even at Sage, they host both of them separately because they can both be at the same convention. Promoting both of these to a Sonic fan base that, let's be real, is gonna like these games helps everyone. And I think this harsh separation takes a lot of the spotlight away from these amazing original projects that I guarantee Sonic fans would love and enjoy. But because the community is so divided, people ignore these games solely because,
If Blue Hedgehog model isn't there, I don't care.
and it's a shame too, because all of these games could really stand out in our community. But all you have to do is move past the fact that Sonic isn't there. Granted, most of these games have numerous mods to add our Blue Boy back in, as well as porting in Sonic levels and such, something I think is really cool. And again, I want these projects to succeed more than anyone. I actually loved Project Rascal's New Sage 2022 demo, and I think it has an enormous amount of potential as its own game, as it has multiplayer, which is insanely cool to me. I find it so weird that people look at my criticism of GT as me being obnoxious and even biased when GT came out like 5 years ago. And even though they said it's finished and done, it doesn't mean it's like fully fleshed out and polished. It has like 3 levels. I mean, 5 years ago has been a long time. Like, yes guys, we're not frozen in time and are constantly progressing. One thing I noticed was a lot of people saw me bringing up Team Season in my original video as dragging them down, which is literally ironic, because if you want to accuse me of being biased against them, then yes, there is a bias, but it's a bias towards them. I've actually communicated much more with those guys than anyone else talked about in this video, and even have a pretty decent relationship with them. So it's weird my words are being misconstrued as me dragging them down, when I actually really like this team, but I still stand behind my original point in saying they both got the same permissions to have a Patreon. And since that video, there's even proof from both sides that Sega has said it's okay, since the money's not to buy the game or get any exclusives, but rather to fund the team and the project. And it's not like they're running away with it, which I don't even know what that would look like, since the money is to fund the team. And the team gets like probably split $25 each. So if one guy runs and takes off all the money, it's gonna be lights out for whoever does that. Also, the team listened and heard my critique from the video on paywalling, and in response, they put their show clips up to the public so that they can stay in the legal clear, which is perfect. And removing or publicizing this paywalled content is the right thing to do, and it's what Omens did in 2020. But again, I'm just clarifying this and don't want to come off as defending or dick-riding for Omens, when I really could care less about that, but want to clear up my message and be fair to both sides. I'm actually really excited about this project, and we even have a ton of positive public interactions if you want to look it up yourself. I even made a promise with them to marathon all of Saturn just for Team Season's Series 3 release. And I've been an obvious public supporter of both projects, so don't get it twisted. But first, I want to quickly settle something that I didn't even say, but I'm hearing everywhere people are putting this in my mouth and saying,
"You said this."
And it is a pretty psychotic take, so it's worth mentioning before we move on.
Hey guys, Supersonic fan 69420 here. Just came to say that, based on Sonic Frontiers, it's pretty mid. I mean, look at this. There's reused stage design. That's an automatic yikes in my book. Also, can we talk about how Sonic Omens is literally peak gaming? Also, might I remind you, I'm the one with the PNG avatar making the video. Either way, please sit back and relax as I just read a bunch of rumors from Reddit and 4chan proving that Sonic Frontiers is going to be a terrible game.
I think Sonic Frontiers might possibly be the best 3D Sonic game ever, and I've never compared it to Omens. Besides that, I've never even compared it to any official Sonic Team title, even though I know a lot of other fans were doing that. With how different their development cycle is, I feel like it'd be entirely unfair for me to compare it to any official game. And it's not like I'm one of those people who cares to argue online about
which Sonic game is better than the other,
as that's something I've moved past in like middle school. Like, okay, you think Sonic and the Black Knight is the best Sonic game. That's your opinion. I don't really care. Again, yes, I did enjoy Omens, especially the latter chapters. However, I in no way think it's going to be even half as good as Frontiers, which is unironically my potential game of the year. And I'm not even pandering to the Sonic community by saying that. This is probably going to be the best game of 2022 for me, especially since I don't have a PS5, so God of War Ragnarok is out of my running.
That's a factual claim based on evidence.
Another thing that I actually think I did mess up on big time was when talking about Omen's production value. Despite making a super long video, I was actually pretty vague. And I also definitely misworded a bunch of stuff, so I want to clear that up really quickly before we move on. So again, I should not have said it's objectively the best. In the video on Omens itself, I explained later on that I was referring to production value in the different areas and playstyles there are, but I didn't go much into it, as many of the categories and game elements it competed in, other 3D titles lacked, making it maybe not the best, but the most complete overall package, at least for a 3D fan game, as while there's numerous billions of amazing 2D fan games, the 3D fan game space frankly isn't as good. And it's no insult to anyone, as some people think I'm mocking the fan game space, as even though I'm very active in it, as I played literally every game at every stage. But the difference is a team of people versus 1 to 3 people. And without funds, it's really hard to get a team of dedicated, talented people to work on a game, which is another reason the Sonic-inspired projects tend to have a way higher production value and a bigger success rate among even non-Sonic fans. Now again, I do really love these fan games, but a lot of them have been continued with spiritual successors, and those I actually like way more than Omens. But like you guys love to remind me, once they become spiritual successors and Sonic-inspired games, and they leave the Sonic fan game realm, they can no longer be fan games, so they can't be the best fan game if they're not a fan game. But again, this isn't some competition about what game is the best or what people do or don't like. And whether you agree with me or not, this is just my opinion. Other than the voice acting, the complete packages, and don't get mad at me for saying this, but it is a great value for an entirely free game. And since it's not like my opinion on it is influencing people to waste their money on the game, I don't know why my opinion is so upsetting. I even agree with a lot of the criticisms of the game, but I think a lot has improved with time, such as the level design, which in the middle section is just straight up bad.
That level sucked.
And when you download it, you have to play it in order and can't just jump to the new chapter's action stages. Also, I know this game has a lot of issues running depending on your machine. So a lot of people were talking about it being buggy and running bad because I talked with a ton of people and got a ton of footage to make this game. And frankly, with like 10 hours of footage, we did find like 5 bugs max. But at least on my computer, I was getting 1080 60 frames. However, I know this is not the case for everyone. So I don't want to invalidate those people's experiences because if it ran bad for you, you know, totally cool for you to hate it. Again, I respect your opinion. Also, while editing, I wanted to quickly add this in here, as I'm seeing tons of these posts directed at me, and I'll just play one of them. But how can you look at this footage of the player clearly trying to go outside the level boundary and then getting damaged and being like,
Wow, this game is awful!
Alright, so they go flying directly up and get damaged. Okay, so they fly into the fire and get hurt. And there's no context, but you can even see on this guy's controller, he's clearly trying to move the plane down. And since he's just compiling other people's gameplay, Josh Boblax, our drama king, and someone who's known for his objectiveness, after disagreeing with my takes on Omens, streamed it and played it himself.
Some people don't know the struggle.
And this is his takes on the ship level, which he went into with a negative mindset granted.
Let's see how Tardo this game is. Okay, time to pilot the Hyper Tornado. I've heard this part of the game's really bad. So this is gonna be like the first really bad level. So this is where we can finally get critical. I mean, okay, so what we're really gonna compare this to would be like a tornado segment from Sonic Adventure 1 and like Sonic Unleashed. And conceptually, this is already better because you can actually, you know, manually control it and do things properly instead of just being on rails. Maybe people are just playing this wrong, because if you like go around slowly and don't try to like speed up constantly like in a Sonic game, like it's really not that bad. That's kind of a cute story reason though for like why this level's like, you know, being able to be accomplished with Tails, because it's like, oh, they set up these defenses for Sonic, not for me. Like, that's kind of clever. I like that. So far, I don't really have that many issues with this. We'll see. I'm waiting for the bad to come. I actually like this a lot. It's kind of fun going fast, too, because you know how dangerous it is. Like, how much health you can lose. Like, you're really kind of on edge, I guess. I like this so far. I don't hate the Tails levels. People were on the Tails levels. Because I didn't just watch the Alice Mark video. I watched, like, some other video where the game was like, the guy was like, yeah, the Sonic levels are good, but the tornado levels are all like really dog, and the bosses are dog, and the shadow levels are dog. But I don't know. So far, I'm having fun. And also, like Sonic Show brought up a good point with the shadow thing, where people didn't know how to switch the abilities. I feel like maybe people went into this and like didn't look at the controls or expected it to be the same as like Sonic Adventure or something like that. I don't know, this seems like fun so far. Yeah, because this doesn't play like Sonic Adventure at all, or Sonic Unleashed Tornado stages, but I think it's better. You just can't be like zipping around at the speed of sound all the time, which is fine. I mean, your default speed isn't even that slow, right? It's not like you're missing out on that much. I think everybody's been coping. And by the way, the common narrative is that this game is Garbo and the developers are Garbo. The developers could be Garbo, I don't know. I didn't really... I'll probably watch more of Sonic Show's video like later to like see how much is debunked and how much isn't. I'll get back to you guys on that, but... my only criticism of that, the level's a little too long. I like that! I like that! I thought that was the part. Where's the part? Fuck you! Woo! I mean, just based on this in the first level, even if you ignore, like, even if the rest of the game's shit, right? You can ignore it and enjoy the beginning of Sonic Omens as one of the best Sonic fan games. Like, a lot of Sonic fan games would be done by now. Even Sonic GT, which I love, is really short, so...
And I'm not like the Omens Defender guy. I really don't care. There are a lot of bugs, so there's a lot of like really valid ones in this compilation. But again, I don't see other fan games get grilled for having the same level of bugs, if not more. Actually, definitely more for many of them. As again, since I play so many games at Sage, I run into bugs often. It's a free game. Like, yeah, it has bugs, and it just got a patch, so a lot of those bugs, even now, just got patched out. I hate having to be in a spot where I sound like I'm crying and defending this game, but at the same time, people are making so many just bad faith points. Like, yeah, there actually are a good amount of bugs. So why would you make a compilation and put in it things that aren't bugs?
We pay you off, you and your pals keep your noses out of our business. That's the dynamic in this situation.
One thing I'll address now is people are saying,
He must have been paid to make that video. The Sonic Show must be getting paid. They pay in the Sonic Show?
and while I'm certain it started as a joke, as they're making $21 on Patreon and about $200 in a currency that's become as valuable as Dogecoin, but let's break it down. 1, they couldn't afford it, as my rates would be all the money their entire studio makes for multiple months. And 2, sponsors get like a minute slot at most, not an hour and a half. Also, 3, I make videos on topics and stories I find interesting and think you guys will find interesting too. I missed the mark here. Play the David Dobrik clip.
And I missed the mark with that one.
While it's fair that I didn't cover many points well, I've seen most of the responses agree with the Patreon take, as the little funds they got transparently said they were going to the studio to fund its current and future projects, which they fully moved on to since Omens is finished. And a vast majority of people, even on Twitter, have come around to this part, as they haven't had an early game release demo up in years now. And with there now being confirmation that Katie privately gave them the okay, I think this is a non-issue that we've moved on from, and I don't have to cover anymore. No, I'm not getting paid by anyone other than Google, and I'm not making either of these videos for clout or attention, as I literally would have gained more of that by making a video on anything else Sonic related. And while I'm not getting paid, another similar point I'm seeing is
Jaden made his video for views, attention, and clout.
but how? If I wanted clout, an hour-long video hyping up Frontiers news that we got would have done so much better, and that's what the people want. Nobody wanted this video, and I knew it was going to flop as soon as I started working on it. It was a 10 out of 10 lowest viewed video in 2 years at the time. I lost hundreds of followers on all platforms and made very little money. And you might be like,
It's long. How did you not make money?
but since nobody could stand to hear me right for the first half of the video and they just clicked off, nobody even got to the point where there would be an ad. And in that time, I could have made tons of way bigger view pollers with all the Sonic news dropping and just entirely ignored Omens. Or if I were to talk about it, read the Google document that's been debunked and proven to be entirely false. And no hate to anyone who read it, even some of my friends read it. I wouldn't expect them to go on like a weird schizophrenic deep dive on the document. They're not like autistic researchers like me or whatever. And the way it's presented, it's supposed to make you mad. You read it and be like,
oh, I'm mad.
And I don't like to brag, but I was getting some of the highest views in the community. And that isn't some weird ego thing people have been trying to put on me for years, but rather just a fact, like it's just true. And that's another thing I've been hearing.
Ego, narcissist, how can he say #1 source? How?
And yeah, I have to talk about it because it feels like I have to refresh my constantly changing audience about once a year on this. But this isn't some narcissistic cope or whatever. It is the longest running joke on the Sonic Show, even before I was a part of the channel. The original slogan of the Sonic Show is #1 source of Pingas, which, man, that shows how culture has changed because I could never do that now without it seeming hella sus. But when I started covering news content and was still a dead channel, just starting back up again, I noticed everyone from Tails channel, Sonic Stadium, and I think even Soa City and a bunch of others all had different variations of #1 source of Sonic news.
And as a small little baby channel at the time,
who prides myself on my high quality editing, I thought, hey, let me get a bit of that #1 source action, eh? because I'm not a super serious boy. However, I'm aware I have grown since then, and I'm not a baby boy channel anymore. So now it seems like, oh, you really think you're the best, huh? You think you're number one? You ain't shit, boy. And it's still the Sonic Show slogan. And even though I don't really say it anymore, and I just spin it off in different joke variations, like
#1 source of Sonic shows
when I cover Prime or whatever is relevant, I am aware that people who rarely watch me aren't in on the joke and think I'm some
ego-driven narcissist who thinks he's the best in the world.
I'm God's gift to the world, the chosen Sonic tuber. But it's very clearly a joke, and I don't see this criticism towards anyone else with similar slogans, you know, like the people I base it off of. But I get these criticisms because I'm not an organization or like a group of people, at least outside of my head. But I'm just alone. So when I say #1 source, it's not like I'm saying we're #1. It comes off like saying like, I'm #1, motherfucker, me. So I kind of understand why people are mad, but I do feel like the joke is fairly obvious, especially at this point. It's also weird that people see it kind of like a beef, because I'm not only friends and super supportive of not just all the Sonic news people, who I do frequently use and source, but also the new smaller channels popping up everywhere. On a human level, I really like a lot of these people, and it's not so like tightrope and neck and neck as people think. I know we all have analytics and different numbers, so it's easy to compare ourselves, and I made a whole video on this. But at the end of the day, a lot of us range from acquaintances to friends, and it really isn't some who's #1, who's #2 competition like people are trying to make it out to be. I'm just having fun and games making goofy little Sonic videos with Playboy Cardi sound effects, okay? But I do genuinely feel like I've always been down to earth, not just with these other creators, but the audience as well. I relate to a lot of the stories you guys write me, and I'm often down in the comments reading and responding. I never delete or hide any comments, except of course the spam that's been flooding the site recently. But I really like connecting with you guys and hearing what you have to say. I know a lot of people will see this as damage control, but I really want this to be seen as taking the criticism head on, because frankly, there's a lot that does need to be cleared up, and I also did make some big mistakes that I want to talk about. It was only a couple years back that I was a tiny channel only pulling 1K views max, so I don't think I'm better than anyone else. And I also know that at any moment, anyone around me could just pop off and fly way past me. And I'm totally okay with that, and only see it as happiness for them and motivation to continue to constantly improve.
I can't believe you've done this.
And that's about all I have to say. I'll do a little wrap up, but I want to know what you guys think below. I try to make the best Sonic videos I can and be my genuine self, and I want that to be the focus of my channel. It's not about being a no-face, anonymous journalist, just getting the cold hard facts out there. Like, where's the fun in that? Why are you even on YouTube if you just want cold hard facts? Get off of here. I think it's possible to be entertaining and informative and talk about things people don't cover, as well as things people do cover, and still have fun with it. To everyone who hates Omens, I actually respect you all, as well as the people who love it. And this goes to both sides, as it's like a Sonic civil war online. But there needs to be a baseline level of respect that we all have towards each other. And I know that's so plain, and it sounds like, wow.
Jaden, you're hating getting hate?
But not even to just me, but even between the people watching this. The discourse on this is crazy, especially with something so minute as our opinions on which 3D Sonic fan games we like. Also, liking one thing doesn't mean you hate the others. This is literally the Twitter waffle meme. I've been trying to get to this video for about a month now, but have been so crammed with Sonic news, and also have been uncertain if I even should make it, as the reception to just talking about it has been super polarizing. I hope people will understand me a bit more, and this doesn't just blow up in my face more and more, somehow getting clipped out of context and spread like wildfire. But I want to get my baseline thoughts out, and this is as condensed as I could possibly be. I know, I'm so sorry. Thanks for watching. Drop a like to support, subscribe and bell, and follow on Twitter. A lot of people blocked me since my last video. Unblock me and refollow me. Lots of love and peace. Peace.
I really hope this wasn't taken out of context. I doubt it, because I've already seen this clip.
Also, can you talk about how Sonic Omens is literally peak gaming?
I like that. I like that. I thought that was the shit part. Where's the shit part?
Did someone clip you and take you out of context, my G? I'm very confused, man.
You really think someone would do that? Just go on the internet and tell lies? You gotta be none of it's true.